Okay, Dennis is not able to be here today. So
Bill, are you going to?
This is it. Okay, it is 12:07.5. Call the meeting to.
I make a motion for approval of the minutes of the March 16, 2022 meeting.
Second.
Discussion?
All in favor of approving the minutes as they were distributed, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Or abstentions? Okay.
So we'll start the meeting, but we have our attorney, Michael Carey, Sussman and Shapiro, to answer some of our questions that are still lingering in our minds as we start to think about applications for grants, etc. Thank you so much for coming.
You're welcome.
And now we're going to go to open session. Anybody want to start?
The only lingering question I have is, as I believe you know, there is an number of outstanding items with regards to sewer and water issues in the town of Oakland. And there are several private associations in the beach community that we believe are going to make application in some way, shape, or form for use of ARPA funds to help with that. I think the committee is sympathetic that they are a stakeholder in the town, and perhaps there is something that could be done to some measure. However, it's not quite clear to me whether or not that is a legal use of the ARPA fund. And secondly, the broader issue, I think, for the committee is that the scope, as far as dollars to remediate those issues, are so large that even if the entire ARPA package were to go towards it, it wouldn't be a drop in the bucket, but it would nowhere go far enough to address that, and then all other stakeholders would be held out. So that's the only point of clarification I would hope to get from legal.
And the question would be whether the ARPA funds may be used for those purposes? I mean, you don't have to if they may be.
Correct. I guess the clearer answer is there a legal reason why we cannot? I'm not saying that we want to avoid doing it, but if there's a legal reason we cannot, that's one plan of action. If there's a legal reason that we can, that's another plan of action.
Well, yeah, the question came up in the written materials I gave you about the crib.
Yeah. Yep.
The crib, I think, is distinguishable because even though it's situated, as I understand it, on private beach associations, these aren't the state chartered associations, it's simply private associations. Even though it's situated there, it was Mr. Collins reminded me that a couple of years ago, I think our office wrote an opinion, or there may have been an opinion before us, that the town had taken care of that crib forever. Town road water and drainage goes through it, and so the town is probably legally responsible for it.
Kind of like adverse possessions or anything?
No, I think it's just been a town drainage, part of the town drainage system, and a lot, town that drains has the right to drain on private property, by statute, drain road water. So, in those cases, I think it would be probably the town's obligation to maintain the thing. But at least I think, not going that far, I will say I think it's appropriate for the town to maintain that one.
That's very helpful.
In terms of these other projects, they may be fundable under the infrastructure prong of the ARPA program, but I tend to think not, depending on what they are. Again, the infrastructure program is for sewage, water, and I think broadband.
Yes.
And, I think the contemplation is probably that we're talking about municipal. And whether you could fund private entities who are maintaining things like that, I think is a question, but I think it may be possible under one of the prongs. But you don't have to fund anything if you don't want to. I mean, so, and if it's going to take up all the funds you have or close to it, I think that's a perfectly good reason not to. I can't sit here now and tell you that anything that the private associations come to you and ask you for a grant for would be outside your ability to comply or to provide.
That's very helpful. Just to add on, Miami is chartered, just so you know.
I would think they're eligible for their own ARPA funds.
One would think so. No. And my question, I don't want to get into the crib specifically, but I have some questions on whether that's a culvert and whether the crib is part of the drainage or just, I don't know what that thing is for. So I think there's some other issues on that whole thing. We need an engineering study to tell us what that is.
I thought there was one. Again, I'm going by memory.
Yeah.
Jack sort of refreshed my recollection on this. But I think there is an opinion out there, and it may have been based on input from the town engineer as well, about the historical use and purpose of that thing. But as I recall it, my understanding is that the crib is used at least in part to carry town-generated storm road water into wherever its ultimate destination.
Martha, could you clarify for my benefit, when you say that they are chartered, Miami is chartered, Mary Jo, another half. You over there.
Bad day.
I'm very sorry about that.
No problem.
You got me off the hook.
When you say that's chartered, could you just distinguish that between the non-chartered associations for me?
Sure, and I'm glad Mike's here, but it means that they have a legislative document that gives them quasi-municipal authority to tax their members.
They're created by, not created, they're authorized and established by special act of the legislature. And then they can modify the terms of the special act by their charters, just like the town of Lyme could have a charter if it wants to. But they're governmentally created, or they get a second birth via a special act of the legislature. And
tax their folks.
Yeah, they can tax. They can have internal regulations. They can enforce parking regulations with fines and citations. I think you have three: Old Colony,
Old Shores.
Yeah, at least.
Not Point of Woods?
Point of Woods.
Yep. The only one that's not is Hawks Nest. Everybody else is incorporated.
Oak Ridge?
Oak Ridge?
No.
Soundview?
Soundview's the town.
Soundview's town.
Town owned. Yeah.
White Sands? White Sands?
Yes.
Yeah. Wait a minute.
So Hawks Nest is like a condominium. It's like a private condominium. They have everyone who owns the property has rights in the common property, and they pay dues, and they're subject to fines and things as well for not complying with their.
Basically any.
Yeah, it's a homeowners association, so, but it has no governmental powers or authority.
Basically every one of the associations down there with a gate.
Okay.
As a gator guard.
Yeah.
But they're also residents of the town of Old Lyme by virtue of having property there.
Right.
Well,
Sands does.
So they get taxed.
White Sands has gates.
Yeah.
Well, thanks. It is. I'm so embarrassed that I didn't know that.
Well, for whatever reason, starting in, it seemed like in about the 1910s going through maybe 1940 or so, there were a lot of these governmental beach associations created by the legislature. The legislature didn't have as much work to do in those days.
That is, whose responsibility is the crib, and you've addressed that. The other question is, would the crib fall into ARPA funding or not?
I think it could under the governmental services,
Government services that I also,
and arguably under the infrastructure.
by way of the fact that town water is
Yeah.
run through that, so it becomes a piece of infrastructure within the town that should be maintained by the town, in essence.
So I think you could fund it under either of those categories.
As long as it wasn't considered flooding relief.
Right, but I think even if it is, you just can't fund things that are only for flood management, stormwater management, and unless if they're infrastructure, then I think you could do them. If all you're doing is, if the only reason for doing a particular project is for stormwater management, then I don't think that's covered by the ARPA grants.
I'd like to just put on record, the recording record for the meeting, that the committee is not trying to
Hinder.
remove a class of application at all. There's been no decision on that whatsoever. The reason that this is so important, why we keep coming back to this question, is clarification, because scale and scope, cost of it. So I just want to make on the record that that's why we're asking this probing question.
We're seeking clarification.
We're seeking as much clarification as we can get, while acting in good faith for everybody that's involved.
Plus, I mean, even though that I understand you're going to get is, or have gotten is not small.
2.1.
Yeah, I mean, in the government world, it's not huge.
Right.
And, I mean, so you're ultimately going to have to make decisions about how to spend the money
And we're trying to find
and
as broad,
prioritize as best you can.
right, and we're trying to find as broad a use
Yeah.
as many folks.
And also just to clarify, if money were to go toward some aspect of the sewer project, that project would have to be completed before 2026?
2026.
Or
The funds would have to be expended.
The money has to be spent by 2026, has to be encumbered by 2024.
Yeah.
Which I looked at a loan program for another town, and I still haven't worked out in my mind what happens with the loans, because they're going to have terms that go beyond 2026, but I think that's doable. I just haven't had it clarified in my mind.
And then there was the Stonington this morning, that's matching.
I know in Colchester, my wife gets these emails from the first selectman all the time, other people do too. Anyways, he's proposed a program where everybody, I think it's every resident, maybe, I don't think it's limited to property owners, anything like that. Everybody gets a $100 gift certificate to spend at any business in town.
Yeah, we read about that.
Yeah.
Which when I first heard it, I thought, this is totally political. And I suppose you could think of worse things to do with it.
Yeah.
Mike, can you clarify for us that, if I can change sewer stuff, we know that the recipient town can only have used the grants from March of 2021. Does that mean that we also can't give out grants to businesses and nonprofits for any costs that these people incurred before March of 21?
That's what I understand it to mean, yeah.
I just wanted to make sure we were all in agreement on that. Okay.
And that's a
Is there an end
piece,
date?
yeah, and that's a piece that when we do our outreach, we need to make clear.
I think for practical purposes, for our situation, the end date would be our deadline for the application. However, I believe the actual end date would be, I guess, December 31st, 2024, because that's when they have to have been. What's the word they use?
Encumbered.
Yeah.
We have to have a zero balance.
Right, if you don't use the money by 2024, it goes back, I guess. So.
Nicole, I know you had a webinar the other day. Was there anything startling that came out that you have questions of or that we should know about?
No, I looked at, it was just for any use of what we are, and the only thing I need to do for April 30th is, there's 3 steps I have to go in and create a project, as they call it, so I just have to go and add us in under governmental services, and then I have to choose the standing allowance and then certify it for them. So I don't have to really do anything right now. But they did talk about obligation versus expenditures. And when they were talking about obligating funds, they were talking about products or services in place, meaning you have a purchase order, like you put in an order to some third party, or you have a contract with a third party to provide that stuff. So those are the, and I wasn't sure what they meant by obligated. It was
That's the word I was looking for, obligated. That's what it's rife in the final rule.
right, so it's not with us trying to determine where we're spending, who we're giving money to. It's actually a little bit more than that.
Okay. Any other questions?
How about on our application? Did you get a chance to
No,
review
I'm
those?
sorry, I've been against it this week.
So one thing I just want to mention on that, thanks for bringing that up,
Yep.
is there is language specifically in the final rule about non-discrimination. So to your point that you brought up last meeting, I think there probably needs to be some of the boilerplate non-discrimination verbiage on the application.
I haven't noticed a lot of that in other towns.
You have or have not?
Have not.
No, I haven't either.
No, have
There
not
was
seen
one.
it, so I don't know the,
I think it's looped into whatever the federal law is. It has to comply with CFR,
right.
whatever.
Yeah,
and
yeah,
it's all under
1910,
that.
120 and all
Yeah.
that stuff.
Is it some language that might serve our purposes better in the contract that the recipient has to?
Well, the contract is after you've made application, been approved.
Right.
I think the requirement is we need to make sure that
We're not leaving something
we're
out.
not leaving out in beforehand.
Doesn't the town have language for hiring?
Sure, I'm not sure what we do to cover that check that box, but however we need to do it, whether it's directly on the application or via the town's website, I don't know.
We do a lot of it on the state side when we have the applicant meet the threshold with the Secretary of State, so on and so forth, laws, or, there's some, I'm sure there is some boilerplate we could put in, laws, ordinances, regulations.
Right.
For state,
It's not really
federal,
lender because
federal,
we're not lending.
right, federal, state, and local. I mean, we used to include that in all of our documents.
But I was thinking, John, like you said, like the employment application, there's got to be some standardized boilerplate documentation that we can use to put on the application.
But we're not actually, at least on the economic side, we're not actually, we're giving them money to recover from a loss they incurred after March, whatever date it is, 2021, March 3rd, 2021. We're not, in essence, I don't believe we're hiring anyone. So those,
No, but
so
you would
so I think,
I just don't, if it's needed,
Yeah.
needed, we should.
Yeah, but I
address
think-
it.
but I
If it's
think
not
that-
needed, great.
then I think there is some other language, 2 lines that can be put in there that
Yeah.
mention the Americans with Disabilities Act maybe, and mention discrimination and so on and so forth. Just something that covers that. I'm sure there's
Yeah, that would be really helpful.
stock language.
I want to say, a lot of that is in the contract, like the town gets a grant. No matter what, I don't consider it a grant, application, but it's in the award thing, you have to sign to get it. And
That's where it usually is.
Right.
Agency, the local contribution, the whole thing, so all of that stuff should be in the first lesson office, and you have what you take forward, so you right out of that.
But I think we're talking about, we're not going to discriminate on your application based on your gender, or your
Exactly.
race,
Right.
ethnicity. That's what you're talking
I
about.
thought we were talking about how the money is spent.
No.
think it's-
From the applicant.
Got it.
That we're not, exactly. That's what I was trying to say.
What we have said at this plan, I think in here there's a reference to the federal law, but it says the applicant is in compliance with applicable laws, regulations, ordinances, and orders applicable to it, which could have an adverse material impact on the project. I did not make this up. Adverse material impact includes lawsuits, criminal or civil actions, proceedings, regulatory action by a governmental entity, inadequate capital to complete the project. The applicant is not in default of the terms and conditions of any grant, loans, leases, and other financing arrangements with its other creditors that could have an adverse material impact on the proposal. The applicant must be in good standing with the Connecticut Secretary of State in terms of required business/nonprofit filings. Really long. So that whole requirement in terms and conditions section would really be helpful to have your eyes on that, Michael, because
I understand.
we don't want to turn people off, but we also don't want to say something that isn't true, and we don't want to leave something out that we might need.
Yeah, the disclaimers are going to be about as long as the application itself. But, I mean, that's the world in which we live.
Yeah.
Well, a couple of the eligibility categories do depend on or allow consideration of disproportionate impact.
Yes. By class.
But
Yeah.
I think it's not really by ethnicity or anything like that. I think it's more like by impact from the pandemic and the lockdown. So those two elements, your concern for compliance with non-discrimination laws, and then the fact that one eligibility criteria is disproportionate impact, might have to be worked together somehow. But I think not, as I say it out loud. I think really the disproportionate impact is restaurants were disproportionately impacted compared to
Liquor stores.
pharmacies, liquor stores. Yeah.
I always use liquor stores as an example. They made out
liquor
like
stores,
that.
I think, actually might have
Actually made
benefited
money.
from it. Yeah.
Exactly.
George just wants.
Can I ask where that language is that you just read from?
In the application.
Yes, I believe it's
From
from Greenwich.
Oh, the Greenwich's application?
This is for
This is for the community initiative application, not in the revenue loss application.
there's two applications. Just,
I wasn't sure whether that came in the contract or...
Well, the draft application that we're considering.
How long have you folks been working on this?
We began meeting in October.
No, because I mean, you've done.
this application, Mary Jo has moved this up in less than a week. She,
Oh,
No,
you've
that
done a lot.
was-
You've done a lot of good work.
she has
Also, every single
draft.
town is doing the same thing,
Yeah.
next to each other,
That's
you
a
know?
whole different project than the
Well,
one
I can tell you that there's still a lot of questions out there about how this works. There's a Connecticut Association of Municipal Attorneys, and it has a listserv. And for a while, there were questions about this almost every day. There were a few more just today and yesterday.
Well, more and more funding, so I guess the questions become immaterial at this point.
Well, yeah, I think so. And this one was sort of basic, going right back to the beginning, but just looking for clarifications on it. It's something that everyone's had to struggle to try to understand. It sounds like you probably all read this final rule and supplemental
Pretty much.
information to it. I mean, that's 3 columns per page times 150 pages or
Yeah.
something. There's a lot of words there. But the more I looked at it, the more I think the basic concepts are pretty straightforward.
It's actually a way to get away from if you got less than $10 million, that part of it, for the standard deduction and then.
Oh, yeah, I think I understand that correctly. I mean, I don't think you have a choice, to make. I mean, why would you?
Why would I subject myself to that?
Yeah, I mean, you're not going to be able to prove you had a loss greater than $10 million, I suspect, so, yeah.
Did you address in the written document, I'm sorry if you did, we've been to town meeting this week, obviously, for certain portions of it already. To get the broad categories approved or the specifics?
I think you can have broad categories approved, and then the funding agency has the authority to make the grants out of those broad categories. I don't think you have to go back for every grant.
No.
But you have to have the money, but you have to have the money appropriated, and it was obligated, I have to say encumbered somewhere.
Yeah,
I couldn't have made that up.
Yeah, I did it again.
Yeah, so anyways, but I think, you have to have the money encumbered in the usual way for money in the budget, to be spent, but I don't think you have to go back for town meeting every time, deciding between.
So if we,
Is it possible then, to dovetail that question, we could go effectively to town meeting and say, we have 2.1 whatever million dollars. Of that, we have released whatever we released to Ledgelight and to the other folks. And we have this number left. We have these 4 categories to be determined by this, collectively by this committee and by our consultant. And we intend to move forward, and we can look for approval at the town meeting for that.
Yeah, I think maybe even, you even reference the applications, you know, which would have your categories. And,
To have it approved. We're going to make a recommendation to Board of Selectmen, and then it has to go to town meeting after that.
Right, but I thought that was going to be one.
But that, in essence, that's what I'm saying.
Yeah,
I'm saying as part of that meeting,
Okay.
Broad category.
the umbrella is the entire bucket,
Yeah.
and then the umbrella under that are the 4 or 5 broad categories. They get blessed, go forward.
And here are the applications.
We're not even there yet.
That's at the end.
I don't think we're there yet. Are we there
What do
yet?
you mean?
well, I don't know.
I'm saying when we go, right now, and correct me if I'm wrong, the $2.1 million has not been approved
Yes,
on Monday.
yes,
So the whole bucket was approved.
yeah,
Okay.
We took it as the standard
Deduction. We did that.
allowance.
Okay.
right.
We still have to go back.
That's the part that I'm.
Yeah, for the
So we go back,
Okay.
when we say we're proposing X dollars for
500,000,
small and
yeah.
nonprofit grants.
correct, like the 4 broad
X dollars
categories.
for-
All right.
And then we're done.
I misspoke.
aren't we? Then we just-
Well,
The
that's
top
the
half
part
of that's
I'm
done.
not sure on.
Yeah.
So maybe you can help us with that.
So-
Basically, well, Martha, you
Okay,
can.
The money,
My thought process, and you can correct me, or do you want to ask me the question first?
no, go ahead now.
My thought was, the applications come in, and let's just say that they've already approved George, and they've approved Ledgelight. So that's off the books. So we're starting a little lower. And we could go back and say, economic recovery grants, we're going to need 300,000. I'm just making up numbers. And for infrastructure, we have applications for 500,000. And bucket it and go to town meeting with that. And that's it for town meeting. And then individually, the Board of Selectmen would vote and Board of Finance. I mean, we go through the process with Board of Selectmen and Board of Finance on that bucket. But when we go to the individuals, then the Board of Selectmen could dole out, possibly with Board of Finance approval. That would be my thought, because otherwise we're going to be going to town meeting.
No, I would think,
And then after,
I'd like to give some thought to the idea that if at the last town meeting, the 2.1 was accepted,
Yes.
and at the same time, was it put in the budget in a slot? Was it put in general funds? Was it put in a special account for ARPA funds? Which is probably what has to be done
It's in a special revenue fund,
for ARPA funds.
restricted,
Right.
right, but
So I think spending out of that would have to be done the same way you spend anything out of a restricted fund.
well, some of them, we spend money without anybody's approval, except like, department head or like for rebalance and something like that. But
Right,
some of them don't require Board of Finance or Board of Selectmen approval at all,
I'm not, this isn't what I'm saying to do, but I'm tending to think that you might be able to do that with the funds as they've been designated already, as they've been deposited into that special fund. I'd be curious, George, how other towns are doing this.
But we have to work to approve.
Because what I hear from the other town attorneys and what has been the basic guideline from the beginning with this is treated with any funds that come in outside regular, tax revenue, which means you have to put it somehow in the budget and make it eligible to be spent. But once you do that, then I think it can be spent in the ways.
Yeah, that's been a sticking point. But that's why I asked the question the way I asked it. I wanted to make sure that.
No, I think some towns actually are going back every time they make a decision to spend money and having a town meeting. But George, do you know what they're doing, like in East Windsor?
East Windsor, the my recommendations were brought to the Board of Selectmen and then ratified by the Board of Finance. And those decisions went about that way. In Somers, there's a third committee after the first Selectmen and the Board of Finance. But in neither case did they have a town meeting process. So
Once you reach the level of being able to actually make grants, then they weren't going back for a town meeting every time they were going to.
no.
Yeah, and
It was done with the approval of the Board of Selectmen. That's where I made my recommendations. That's where they directed me to seek additional information. Everything was coordinated through there. And then the other town boards and commissions supported that. And I guess there's a different hierarchy in towns, different processes. You know, it's Connecticut, so.
well, here I think here is probably the same or not terribly different than East Windsor or Somers. I mean, sounds like those are Board of Selectmen town meeting towns with boards of finance.
And I'm not an attorney, but my work in government would lend me to support what you're saying, that once the town designates the money, it leaves it to its town officials to administer that. And then whatever process the town has, Board of Selectmen, approval, sometimes it goes to the Board of Finance before it goes to the Board of Selectmen. You know, there's different, towns do it differently, but those are the basic components.
When this committee was created, was it given the authority to make grants?
No.
Or was it just done, you're a study?
Recommendation.
Recommendation. So, but whatever resolution created this committee also said that the Board of Selectmen will make the final decisions on grants?
Right, that's where we are now.
Yes.
All right.
We'll do, the process for us is application filtering, approval, rejection, and then from here it goes to the Board of Selectmen for approval and Board of Finance, and then out the door. I think that's where we are.
Well, yeah, so right now I tend to think that you don't have to go to a town meeting again for this, to spend this money. But I could contradict myself on that, but that's the way I felt, from the beginning going through this stuff. That once the money was in the budget and well, it's not encumbered, but it was in a fund and it's designated for use.
Allocated.
I think it can be spent in the normal course. You've got X amount of money in the public works budget. They spend it as they need to. The department does. You don't have to go to a town meeting every time they write a check for whatever. And I think that's what can be done here, unless there's something in the specific requirements for ARPA from the Treasury Department that I'm not aware of. But I don't think there is. I don't think they were terribly concerned about the internal
workings. They just want to make sure that the money they gave you gets spent in a way, and you have to have a mechanism in place. With application I've been involved with the economic recovery package. Here's my loss, here's my request. They come in, they sign an attestation that they pick up this check. Really, we're out at that point. Technically, we're out. What they choose to do with that money, hopefully it's not go to the casino, but if they decide to do outdoor dining or something else different or fix their facade, they actually lost the money from March 3rd to the point they made the application.
Right. Okay.
Thank you.
I think you might want to make sure they spend the money on purpose they grant.
Right.
I'm
saying is they lost the money because they lost revenue and couldn't serve sandwiches in the case of the restaurants. They've said to us, we lost $10,000 because we were closed. We would like to get that $10,000 back because we want to do this. I think they have to sign when they're awarded the money. It says they're going to go.
We're not telling them how. We're not asking them how they're going to spend the money.
Not for the economic
recovery. Not for economic recovery.
Right. All we're asking is, what was your loss? And we're paying it without any. They could go to the disappointing, but they could go to the casino. if
Because
they
their
want.
proof is what they've already provided to be a pro.
Right, as long as what they, that's right.
George has had more experience
Yeah.
than any of us with this. He's done the grants and he's seen the recipients, so perhaps he could weigh in.
I don't think there's any connection between what they use the money for and what they got the money for. I think you should ask them what they're going to use it for reporting purposes and to tell the community what you had expected, but conditions change from the time it's a business. Things change overnight in a business. So they lost the money, that was for certain. They think today, as they sign the paperwork, they might like to put a new sign up. But then the roof's leaked. So they didn't put the sign up, they fixed the roof, and that was the only way the business could stay in business. These are the type of real-world things that have happened during this public health emergency. People have intended to do one thing. They actually took the money to keep the business going from the children's education fund.
Right.
And now they're getting 10 grand.
It's
And that's where
not going back into the college fund, right?
Well, or it is going back into the college
Not
fund.
into the
It's not going to go to the business because he lived on that loan or she lived on that loan. So I believe it's appropriate to ask what you intend to do with the money, but then there's no enforcement action afterwards.
There might be
That
some,
doesn't.
I mean, if you a God improvement program or something like that, then I think you want to follow up, make sure the money.
But that's
That's different.
That's under the municipal part of
Yeah, I agree.
ARPA, not.
I mean,
I'm sure you're right.
yeah, I think that goes right back to that point. They've already proven the loss.
Right.
They've established that they lost money. Once they've done that, we're making them whole, if you will,
Right.
by giving them the money.
We put a mental health program in place administered through LYSB. We want to make sure that program.
That's a different animal. Completely different animal. Right. But that was just to contrast the 2 points.
Okay.
Thank you, Joyce.
And maybe it's a good argument for keeping it at 10 grand. I mean, I was on the fence, to be honest with you, I thought 10 grand is low.
Well, that's an old one we're going to talk about.
Oh, well, anyway, sorry, but that's a good argument for that.
So any other questions about
Yes,
apps?
yes. I think we need some words on the contract with George, and maybe that's coming up.
Yes.
And then any contract or attestation we need to have for recipients of our grant.
So we do have a contract with George that Michael has seen and has made some suggestions on, and there are things, and George was kind enough to go through it, and we sat beforehand of the things he can live with, and then he had a few questions. So we can sit here and do this as a whole group, or we can take a couple of people out with Michael, or Michael and George can work this out. Nothing is really too big. The big one is the Indemnification Clause that has some language in it. And George will tell you that both his original agreement was vetted by 2 other Hartford law firms, one with Summers and one with East Hartford. And this was East Windsor, sorry. And this was the one, so he basically sent us one that had already gone through 2 law firms, but we have our own language down here on the shoreline, and we understand that, and everybody likes to put their spin on it. So,
It's not a matter of me putting my spin on it. I
No,
thought
yeah.
these are things
No.
that we're
so I think that
worthy of being concerned by you.
So I think that we just need, I know, but we just need, and we know you're looking out for our best interest, so I think that,
Why don't I go out with George and
and maybe
want to
we'll,
have 1 or 2 delegates go with me?
Still cage match.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's 2 out of 3 for
Do you want to do that, Mark?
With all respect
no, I
to the
want
committee,
someone else to do it.
There's an old adage.
So mild mannered, I could just see.
Is there a volunteer to go mediate these 2 thugs as they meet each other?
I'm glad to go out if
Would you,
Yes.
because
Thank you.
in the end, I have to approve it.
Yeah.
I will approve anything that you say, but I just,
Don't say that. I understand what you want.
I don't want to get too close there's nothing on here that changes language or money, but
No, and when I
Changes
looked
money?
at it,
Sure.
when I looked at it, the only thing, that area that I thought he might be concerned with is
you have your original?
So I'm glad to do.
All right, can you do that quick? That'll save us all time.
Yank some static out of that little bit. Yank some.
So we're gonna just, I'll just make a motion to move George's part of the movie down at once he returns from that quick conversation. And,
I second that motion.
All right, all in favor of,
all in favor of aye. And we get to go to new business. Joe, take it away.
I didn't know that I was on there, sorry. Development of Community Initiative application. Okay. You guys already got a copy of the revised version. Thank you for everybody that had input. I mean, at this point, I think we pretty much have given it to Michael Carey for input to make sure we're not doing anything inappropriate that's outside the law, and we aren't forgetting something. Yes, I have a question.
Mary Seidner and I were in a meeting with arts organizations yesterday, and I shared with them that this application would be coming up. They should start to think about, one, their own losses, but also do they want a particular initiative to submit. And they had some questions that neither of us had thought about.
Okay.
On the application, it says that the initiative, I think the wording is exclusively or just serves the Old Lyme residents, something like that.
Later on, a couple pages.
I think we had
I see what
oh, under 4.
So,
Okay.
so a place like I'm making this up, Lyme Art Association, if they were to have an initiative, they can't cherry pick Old Lyme residents attending that. A church, for instance, wouldn't be able to only serve Old Lyme residents. They're serving their whole parish or whatever it might be.
Tourism is trying to bring in people from.
And that's the second part. If they're addressing tourism, that's bringing people in outside of Old Lyme. So it's not just your own.
Strike that requirement that it's.
I think we just had demonstrable presence.
No,
No, it
it's
says,
in there. It's in
somewhere it
there.
says
On the
exclusively.
front page, turn it over. No, on the.
No, it's right there. And applications must exclusively serve Old Lyme residents.
That's it.
That was
yeah.
added because she highlighted it.
The highlights were my additions, actually.
So you added it, now you want to take it away?
I do.
Okay.
It's here too.
I know, I was surprised by that, so I'm glad we're having a discussion, because we hadn't put that
I
in.
do think that is an unintended.
I like demonstrable
What's your stuff?
because it's
Yeah,
the onus,
absolutely.
don't like it. Are you so comfortable with that?
Yes, I am, and there is another that I added, which was, if you are located outside of Old Lyme, please show how you serve.
Right.
You know,
I think that
so-
covers it.
Yeah, it was like, it'd be nice to know how many residents Shoreline Soup Kitchen serves,
Right.
Old Lyme, even though they're
And you all
located
have
in
those
Old Saybrook.
statistics.
Yeah, they keep track of that stuff. So,
Okay.
Absolutely.
So we can
Okay.
delete that, and
delete that.
and Mark, depending on what we decide here, just as an aside, I'll update this and send it to you and Michael.
Okay.
Okay.
And you have his email? Yeah, I'm sure you do.
Sounded so.
And
Don't I have it?
so we're all clear, the George application, the revenue loss, that is also where a family or an individual who incurred loss, that is where they will apply.
I thought somewhere that I read that they were to contact social services.
Yeah, that's in the application.
They can.
They can, but they could, we were trying to figure out if an individual wanted to apply, which one would they do?
I didn't,
And we
has to
decided
be
it was
the-
I
under
didn't think they
Georgia.
were eligible.
They absolutely are.
They are.
Yes, absolutely
Yeah.
are. Yep.
But we have money that we've been using it all along to help people. In fact, we just helped somebody last week.
Okay.
Okay, so we're going to help people inside of ARPA funds and external to ARPA funds through the COVID recovery.
We absolutely would be ill-advised to exclude individuals and families from our
I think what it is that like
because
other.
it's one of the primary goals.
Yeah, and there's different ways to do that, right? Here's a check to cover your rent, here's a job program, here's mental health services, there's different ways.
We could even give cash. I mean, I'm not saying we're going to do that, but we could even do that. So that's as granular
Yeah,
as
like
it gets.
I think it came up too because some towns, like we were looking at Roanoke, Virginia, and maybe some towns weren't as lucky as Old Lyme. Like Old Lyme has very generous people who are very willing to help financially and in other ways.
Right.
And so because of that, we have a very nice amount of money that we can use to help people, and it's worked out, but other towns might not have that luxury.
Right, and it would be ideal if all of our needs for that were met through
So I didn't get that,
those
so I
items,
think that.
those other resources.
So,
Yeah.
would it,
Yeah.
so would it be possible, should say we get an application from an individual family member, whatever, and it's for, I'm just gonna say, $1,200 for rent, and we know that perhaps the other outside sources could cover that, and that $1,200 would be better used to economic recovery, or, so can we talk or call the person and say, we're going to refer your application to someone else? I mean, can we do it that way? How would we go about that?
I think we have to get their approval.
Yeah, that's what I mean.
Yeah, I think if we got their approval, I mean, the application does say, it does reference it.
Yeah, but
This
it wasn't clear to
But
me.
if an individual is going to continue to pursue an application, which one do they do? The economic
Georgia.
recovery, or Georgia?
It has to be that.
So then maybe we should put that in there, you know, if it's under the revenue laws paragraph, which is telling people to go towards the other application, we should be specific that individual residents,
Yes.
Yes,
because right now it
Yes.
has about social services,
yeah, it's unclear.
that you should put about
The
that.
other,
It says if you are applying for assistance to individuals or families, you may contact Old Lyme Social Services, da-da-da-da-da.
Yeah, that's how I read it, that it
or
was click
click
going
the
to
link.
the.
I think I added click the link.
Yeah, but I
We
did.
also need to let
To me,
them
it felt
know.
like it was like,
Don't
don't
apply.
bother us, go.
Bother
You
me.
don't apply on that application, but
Right,
you can
right.
apply under the,
Maybe what
Right,
it
you
should
have to be
say,
a little more specific.
maybe
that's
what
all.
it should say is contact social services first. No?
I think we can't prevent someone from applying. I
Say
think-
for an application or to apply. It says,
somebody could be Mary's neighbor, and perhaps they just have not, because of pride, not wanting to go to LISB. We don't know what that is.
There's also the flip side of that. There are some people that we've helped quite a bit. So how do we be fair in our distribution
That's a really
to make
good
sure that everyone
I
gets?
think that what we should do is direct them towards the other application and social services.
Sure.
And
I
then
agree.
the other application should
Okay.
have an opportunity for them to apply and mention that social services
So let's
is
talk
available.
to
this is
George
all
when
new
he
to me,
comes
so
back.
the revenue loss is not just for businesses.
No.
Well, the revenue
Personal
loss
revenue
is
loss.
also, an individual in a household has
Okay.
also lost
Okay.
So,
revenue.
I, for one, need to look at that application again and read it as an individual to make sure it still makes sense. Does it still make sense? Yeah?
Yeah.
For
And
an
did George
individual
say that he
household?
got individual applications
No.
in his other
He
towns?
never said
He's
mention
a small
that.
business.
So we gotta
Well,
talk to him again.
Yeah.
Okay.
When he
All right.
comes
Other day,
back.
we
So
can
we
put
need
all
to
the
circle
buckets.
back to that.
So
Take a look at that
we're going to
slide.
pin that till George comes back.
Yep, okay. So on this community initiative one as well,
Okay.
one of the things they talked through, maybe we need to make it clear, let's say a nonprofit didn't have their whatever
Fundraiser.
their car show, I'm going to make that up. But they cut back their expenses, they didn't give out scholarships that year, or they raised money another way. Are we looking at, how do we communicate, we're looking at net loss, or how are we clarifying?
Think about a nonprofit that didn't have their fundraiser,
This is
yet
George.
their community campaign did it.
Yes,
Just,
right.
you know, and so.
We're not
the
asking
annual
that
fund.
though.
On the economic recovery?
Yeah, I mean, if they did well elsewhere, okay, but I mean, they can apply.
I think it's net loss, isn't it?
Yeah, it's revenue loss or
Revenue.
economic impact due to COVID.
Okay.
Yep.
How will this, having that particular
Well,
fundraiser
the
that
only
they
way
didn't
we-
have, how will it help the community? How will it help them recover?
And I'm sorry, I misspoke. This
No.
is economic
Sorry.
recovery.
No,
So,
it's-
no, I
It's in
misspoke.
the final rule. What you do is they provide you several years worth, it's an example. They provide you several years worth of what your prior fundraisers generated. That's a very easy to do, yeah.
Right.
Here's what we've done over the past several years. Here's what we would have reasonably expected.
So
George,
the fact
we'll
that
look at
one
that.
donor wrote a $500,000 check, doesn't matter.
Right.
Got it.
Okay, well.
And it
then
doesn't
they're
mean
ahead
they're
of the
gonna
game.
get $10,000 either.
Yep.
No.
I mean, everywhere in this, and I hope in Georgia's, I'm not an expert on Georgia's at all, but it says you know, apply, it doesn't mean you're gonna get it.
Nicole has a comment.
Well, just on that fundraising piece, that's stuff that's spiked out on the Form 990, so it's not an easy, it's not a hard number to get, so I mean, that's one of the things.
Okay.
George, I mean, he should be able.
Yeah.
Ask him to address that question, I'm curious of the answer.
Put another pin in it.
Let's not do economic recovery grant until George comes back.
Okay.
Let's pin some questions for George.
And I'm sorry, I thought, sorry, going in a wrong direction. Okay, but the one other question on community initiatives. Phoebe Library, on their library ARPA funding, they were requested to use American-made products.
ARPA funding or COVID?
Libraries have
Coronavirus?
No, libraries got a special ARPA grant just for libraries.
Just like schools
Okay,
did.
all right, thank you. I didn't either.
So they were told they had to show American-made. So are we doing that, Nicole?
I think, I only know that Phil mentioned something about you want to use some of this money, cameras up in town, parks, and theme parks, and he's saying something about they couldn't be, the ones they thought they were going to use were from China, and they couldn't use that. So I just mentioned that, but I don't know.
I don't think we would be able to easily enforce that. I also philosophically don't know if we want to try to go down that path.
Not to mention, there'll be an American company, and you think you're buying an American-made, and then you flip on the back of the box, and you find out it wasn't made here.
Well, it's whether it's in the
There's no
final rule or
requirement
not.
for that.
It's not
There's
in-
no
okay,
requirement that
okay.
I've seen in the.
I didn't either, but I mean, that's why we're having our lawyers
Because-
look at this.
Yeah, they were a little restricted in something they wanted to do. Okay, I think that's it. And then just the whole, like, double dipping on funds. You can't get ARPA funding for a community initiative and other federal funding, but can you?
Well, the question is, you can't supplant ARPA funding with other funding you have, but what if you have a program that you're using federal funding for and you want to expand it to serve more people? Could you use this community initiative grant for that expansion? That expansion isn't funded by the federal, but the program itself has some, but not total.
The real prohibitions in the final rule that I understand them to be is if the municipality, not the subrecipient or the recipient, if the municipality had already received one grant, a federal grant, separate from ARPA, that they could not forego that grant and use it with ARPA funding. They had, because the intent with ARPA was to address non-already committed expenditures to meet the need as it ties back to economic relief, economic loss and revenue for the population. Is that different from what your understanding is?
No, I think that's accurate. Yeah.
So on the subrecipient, which would be the Art Academy or whatever, or Lyme Service Bureau or whatever, if they already have a grant in place, I don't see anything in the final rule that prohibits them from applying from ARPA from us.
Right.
Now, they would have to obviously show what it is they're using it for, and it would have to fall within our broad categories for us to be comfortable with it.
And in fact, I don't know that necessarily even has to be for expansion, but if they were going to put in their own, use other funds, I don't know what.
Sure.
That's okay.
Sure, from their normal profit raising.
Exactly, whatever their profit center is,
And they don't want to do anything that jeopardizes their federal funding. I mean, that's their primary driver, their primary funding agency. That's what they'll be audited on.
There's certainly nothing that I've read, and it's certainly not the intent that the receipt of ARPA should in any way be expected to hinder any nonprofit from being able to use their normal course of funding going forward. And the other thing I know we're going to talk about, we got to mention, we have to remember, but for the press release, it's not just 501c3s, it's 501c19s as well.
I just put C, I think. 501Cs, that's all I wrote. Is that okay?
The final rule specifically says 501c3s, 501c19s. That's what the final rule says.
Perfect, thank you.
I don't really know the intricacies of the additionals beyond those two.
There's a lot of fees.
Yeah.
There are a lot of fees.
There's a lot of fees.
But that's what the
All the way up
final
to
rule
17 or whatever.
specifically says.
or whatever.
19.
That's what we should do.
Mary Jo, do we talk about putting on the application a checklist of our 11 survey categories to help us? I think Cheryl mentioned, like, it's not necessary, but like for us later to say this much went to this fund, this much went to that fund. Those are more specific than the 4 broad categories.
I think where I just took from that, to save space, was to list them at that last paragraph of what those
Do
categories
we want people to check off though? So they're telling us what they think
I
they're
think that would be a
covering.
wise idea. I do think when we're reviewing them, it would be really helpful to categorize them.
Oh,
Which area?
So, for example, on this page, we're asking them to check boxes. So under government service, you would want them to put what?
Like
any one of
infrastructure,
those.
broadband.
What are the 11 categories in our
The
survey?
list that we created, remember the list that we
One
created?
through
Yeah, I put that on the archive. How would you see that working?
If you would have like the 11 categories with a little line next to it, check all that
It's just going
apply.
to be an online application or a PDF. You just check a box. I think it's easy.
Under each of the 4 categories, or just in
Just
general?
in general.
In general, I would make it a separate section under that.
Well,
Because see that, so some of them could go under different boxes. That's why I
that's
thought,
exactly what I was just thinking.
yeah, so that's why I kind of got.
Why don't you just do a thing where you put the check boxes next to each one, please check all
one
that
or all-
apply.
one or
So it
all
doesn't
that
have to be
apply.
under either one, it's just one general.
Everybody's gonna check every box so that they can.
Because really, Mary
Well, they
Jo,
can't check
not all
broadband
11
if they're
are
not doing broadband.
easy to distinguish in that right there.
Agreed, that's why I gave up and put it in there.
I'll help you find the place
Okay,
for it.
all right.
Also, I know it's not specifically on the agenda, I just checked, but before they come back and we get distracted again, I did talk to the assessor. She gave me 2 lists that she was able to give me that are public information. Can I share these? I said yes. This is a list of all the non-exempt, like basically nonprofits, the churches who don't have to pay taxes or get a tax reduction. She couldn't give me every nonprofit because you have to apply for a status quadrennially.
Which we did this year, yeah.
Yeah, you did. This year was a quadrennial year, but she can't give me that because it's protected information.
I just want to use quadrennial here.
In a sense.
We can ask her why. Then she gave me a list of all the businesses, personal property business owners. There's 450 of them, Cheryl.
How many?
I would love that list.
There you go.
Copy of that, thank you.
450. I can send you the, yes. Look at it.
100.
No.
People are hiding, right? There are many, many small.
They're small businesses.
Is mine on there?
Businesses, and if you look at the
Look it up.
PPP loans,
Pretty much all of us have.
you can see
Yes.
businesses you weren't familiar with.
Every mother.
All right, which,
I will send that to you in an Excel spreadsheet if you like.
Awesome, thank you.
This application, we still talking about?
Yes, sorry.
I have like a overarching question, because I know we've talked a lot about transparency with
Yep.
rates.
Yep.
So my other question has to do with accessibility, because I didn't see anywhere in terms of, and I don't mean ADA, but I mean, are we going to make ourselves accessible to someone to help them? And I know,
That's a really good question.
yeah, I know we don't want to be hand-holding, I agree with you, but it's the big span between, here, good luck with this.
You know what? A
Yeah.
lot of grant applications have
Oh, I was just gonna go that.
Go
That's
for
my,
it.
that's
Yeah.
my experience. If you're applying,
You have a meeting.
a big, and you are also assigned a program, an officer with,
that's Nicole.
yeah. I know, no, you're assigned an officer in the foundation that will answer every single
Right,
phone.
but this is so unique.
I understand, but
Mix between.
where do?
Well, that's why,
Where do we want to put ourselves in terms of?
well, that's why there were
I don't
some
know
blanks.
for that part, but I could see
Oh, I agree, no, I agree.
like a mayor's conference or something, you know.
I don't know,
yeah.
something like,
Thank you.
basically, if you
Thank you.
need help with the application,
Yeah.
Some of those white smoke.
somehow,
Yeah, we need a George. I mean, basically,
Nazis.
this needs to kind of
yeah.
help people and also to track.
Because I'm thinking at the end of the process, the last thing I want to hear is, well, I had a,
Complete application.
or that I really wanted to, because I was going to do this, and I just didn't.
What do we do?
I can serve in some capacity.
Either couldn't
It's a 30-day window. I mean,
couldn't
I can
figure out
serve in
how to
some
complete
capacity.
I have one vendor.
Didn't understand.
Rick said he would do it, everybody.
Yeah, I can serve in some capacity.
I'll help you.
I mean,
I think I'm familiar with the final rule and how to navigate around it.
But you understand where
I do. I completely
Yeah.
understand what you're saying.
And we can funnel the request for help through the ARPA email.
Yeah, my husband is eligible, and he said, no, I'd rather someone else have it. I'm like, no, you idiot, you just don't want to fill out a form.
A lot of people say that.
Yes.
Other people need it more than I do.
Yes.
I hear that a lot.
Yes, and that's fine,
I do think questions could be directed toward in the email, the ARPA email.
Yeah.
And that could be shared with you, you could call people back or something.
That's the best. Send an email here.
Yeah, I'll act as that.
And that could also be an ADA accessibility
I'm
assistance
going to
as
really
well.
regret having volunteered for that.
I know you are.
Well, after you look at that list of 450, you might be regretting it.
Only for the
Community initiative
That's the
grant.
community initiative.
Yeah.
Right.
Because
Oh, right.
George is going to have it.
Correct.
Right.
I'm sorry?
But this is going to be a
And I think, and some sort of indicate that somewhere on the application.
oh, of course,
Yeah.
absolutely. I mean, that's how it's, I mean, we need
And
to
in the
have
press.
some
And in
information.
the press release, right.
Committee member,
Yeah.
Rick, not just person Rick, committee member. I think it's important. George, how did that go?
Good.
All right. George, one of the things that we didn't specifically ask of you is, if you are a family or an individual and you experience loss, and they have a quantifiable loss, we're assuming, or maybe I'm assuming, that that's an application that would go to you.
Are they a business?
They're not a business.
Are they a nonprofit?
No.
Family, household,
That would be a whole different ball of wax.
that's what I thought.
I didn't even think that was
It could, I believe it could be included, but now you're opening up such a large potential. I mean, every person in the town has some form of loss.
Yeah, so backing up one step, we have had a fund in town to help people. So there are some people who have already reached out over the last 2 years. But this, I think we need to decide, is it a separate application or is it the same application as the business? I think it should be a separate application.
So like we've been paying people out of this privately donated fund to help people.
Right.
But can we use the ARPA funds to help them as well? Because Rick says it's clear that that's a category.
It's clear that we can.
Yeah.
It is clear. It's
Yes, but I have
Show
to,
us what they lost.
I have to be honest with you, I have not studied any of that part of this, nor do I have any experience with it.
And nor did either of those towns do this?
No. And one of the balances you're walking here is you don't want to become a forensic investigative operation, and you need to treat everyone exactly alike. So that becomes problematic in how are you comparing losses exactly. So within the business area, we've outlined if you were closed during these days, these are things that you can be reimbursed for. Every single item that's in your household account then becomes subject, in my mind, to some scrutiny.
Well,
To compare it with another person who's claiming a need.
right, well, I mean,
That's hard.
the final rule allows specifically that you can help with lost rent, increased incurred costs from childcare, medical expenses. It even gets into, I'm not saying we publicize this, but it even gets into deferred maintenance to your home that has occurred because you didn't have funds and you were, so my recommendation would be that we have, I think it's imperative that we at least open this up to the individuals and family members in the town. George, we hear you, understood, you can't handle it, it's beyond your purview.
I'm not saying that. I'm saying it could be I'm here to talk to the town about what you're trying to accomplish and how I can help you do that. You could run a sister application that's different.
Yeah.
And then just ask a much shorter application and just ask those specific questions.
Provide us evidence of the loss incurred.
Right, but for instance, when you get to deferred maintenance, I was gonna paint my house last year, I swear to God.
When I'm reading this, you've got to be kidding me.
But see, that's what I mean, so as soon as someone says that to you, I was going to.
Also, how do
Is
you
there
prove-
any evidence?
How do you prove a negative? Like, for example, oh, I'm a house cleaner, but I couldn't clean houses. That's, you don't get a regular paycheck, you're self-employed.
Your,
Show us your
your IRS,
tax, show us your tax return.
So,
You want to start reviewing people's
George,
tax
do you have an
Easy enough.
example of that?
well, so that's where it starts getting tricky at the end. Your tax return, what that says versus what you, because accountants do all kinds of things.
Yeah, but
I
we
mean,
can only go on what is legally filed with the IRS. That's all we can go with. On the individual side.
oh, on the individual side. Okay, well then
On the
that,
individual side.
yeah, then if,
You're
but that's
telling me
what
that
the,
you're a house cleaner and you lost your house cleaning business, which I fully believe. If you're collecting that and getting paid under the books, that, I can't fix that.
right.
I can't help that. Well, the committee can't help that. ARPA can't help that. We just can't.
Unless it's our cleaning lady, and we know.
No, but if I incurred $500,000 of out-of-pocket mental health services for my child because they were having a tough time during COVID, you can show us what those co-pays are.
Yeah, that's showing proof of a payment,
Right.
not loss.
is there any,
But a proof of a loss would be,
Yeah,
on your
different.
Schedule C,
Yeah.
it's,
Yeah.
John's cleaning service, I had $10,000 last year, and during
Yeah.
COVID, and
Well,
March
that's,
1st, I
you know,
had
that's what I'm wondering, is there any scenario where that's the only thing we're asked for is your income tax return, and we don't get into, reimbursing for,
proof of loss
of loss.
proof of loss or expense incurred. Proof of loss or expense
The
incurred.
expense is-
And then you-
Examples might be tax returns, receipts.
I was gonna say, you'd have to think about if you were gonna do that. One is a tax return. Two, it would have to be some verifiable document.
I don't know,
Okay.
if this committee wants to get into.
Can I just
I
say,
don't think
are we
so.
talking George's name?
No.
Okay,
We're talking
Just to
about
make-
how to give help to individuals.
right, okay.
So, another idea might be have an organization apply for funding for individuals, and we give a
Right.
small chunk to somebody
could.
else to do that.
are we already doing that in
Yes.
theory?
But not from
Yeah.
ARPA funds, from
Not
private
ARPA funds.
donations.
There was
No,
private-
but won't we get people applying for ARPA funds?
Or an organization.
An organization,
Yes,
I mean,
we
sorry.
expect that.
Yeah. We could,
Maybe,
But also, if you get individuals, again, this goes back to what Jen started at the beginning, is we refer them to those agencies, and at least you are made aware of those.
You guys
laws.
did a review when you got a request, right?
yes,
we did a review, we did.
but we don't ask for tax returns.
Right.
We
Okay.
have more discretion.
Okay, well, one thing that perhaps we could do as a committee is we could say to provide for the impact to individuals and households. We're going to
Refer you to social services.
We could take an amount that we determine and
yes,
give it,
Exactly.
Right.
yes.
and so,
Plop it
and
here.
take it out of this committee. and-
Yeah.
I agree.
That's good, Mary.
I agree, that gets
But the
us,
other thing too is if we have 2.1, it sounds like a lot, but it's not a lot.
I understand.
And if we have money that was given to us privately, maybe we don't use the ARPA funds or as much ARPA funds for that purpose, so that it can be used for other things.
So can I suggest that at a future meeting, we determine if we are going to make a payment out to an agency or organization in town to administer, thank you, a fund for individuals?
Or the town.
Why can't we do it today?
Why don't we do that?
And we've got
Because we have a
applications.
full plate
No,
right
no,
now.
no, I'm just saying, say this is the social services department that's going to fill this out, wouldn't that be an application for you guys?
Yes, and other towns have done that. Other town social service departments have applied through this process.
Right, isn't that the shortest,
And
straightest
you're
line?
you're part of the government.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying.
But I like the way I have it now.
I'm trying not to. Well, there's a system already set up.
Mary and I consult
Formally
with
give
each
money
other.
to that fund.
But I have my own discretionary
And we don't know
fund.
how much
Set up
we
your
want
own
to give.
process.
So maybe we
not
can
dissimilar
back.
from legislate. This is not dissimilar from legislate, but we can't really,
Right.
we can't say, we have to have this decided before we finalize our applications, send out our applications, because if we don't, and Lyme Youth Service Bureau or somebody else doesn't come back and say, we request $50,000 to be put towards this fund, we're going to be subject to criticism saying, listen, one of the main premises of ARPA is to help individuals and families, and you didn't do anything. You didn't allow individual applications, and you didn't. We have to address that.
Yeah, but I'm just saying we leave it with the town.
I completely agree,
Okay.
but we need to make a
But we
decision.
need to say that.
Got it.
Well, we
It's not going to
did.
be in either one of these.
We did. Yeah. So how do you want to say this now?
Right, no, it's great in there, but I'm saying from the committee level, if that's the approach that the committee wants to take, which is a valid approach, it's very similar to what our decision was with Ledgely. We should proactively say, we are going to carve X dollars out of 2.1
For families.
for individuals and family
families.
health, and the way we do that is we're going to put X dollars into the fund that already exists and has a proven track record.
Yes,
Perfect.
and my only point in saying, hang on, my only point in saying at a future meeting is we don't know what our buckets are yet. I mean, we don't know the amount we're putting into our buckets yet. So we don't know today if we want $20,000 in that fund or $75,000 in that fund. I think we have to make that decision, that amount, in relation to everything else we're doing.
I also think we can make it specific. Like, right now, we're very general with how we help people. Like, how are you stressed out right now? Is it your rent? Is it your car payment? Is it your electric bill? But we could say, like, there's going to be a program for mental health. Like, be proactive, reimbursement. But I'm saying we could use the funds that we currently have to do that, Mary.
No, I think it should be a separate grant.
But I think it's wise to say that this is a commitment we're making now, we just haven't put a dollar on it.
Right.
So therefore, because we're making this commitment now, we do not need to have it on either of the.
Yes,
Right.
Ding, ding, ding.
Exactly.
Agreed. Put that in a minute.
We go back to what we had before.
Yeah.
And then just put, if we want a caveat for now, that the town of Lowline will be providing grants for this purpose.
We could put it on both applications.
Well, yes, but I meant,
Yeah.
we can just say we will be, at some point, funding this particular
And
need.
you may want to give them contact.
It's
Well, we've
a,
got that on.
Okay.
Yeah, I'll put some verbiage, see what you guys think on it.
Yeah.
When's like May 1st? When is our target for the?
We're going,
Isn't it like April 1st?
we need to have this out live next week, people.
okay, so it's not on the agenda to talk
self-imposed
about, yeah, but it's not on the agenda
But
to
we've
talk
got
about
the
outreach, but.
June Board of Selectmen meeting.
They can have a special meeting, but June is our target to get to the Board of Selectmen. That is correct.
By the end of June.
Is there
You don't have to-
discussion about the application?
I am not going to make this be based on whether you guys have a meeting June 1st. That's ridiculous.
So, Joe,
Yes.
I can help you with formatting that and putting it in like this PDF fillable.
Oh, excellent.
I'm second guessing doing that, but yes.
We can also check with Michelle Nora, and she does that for us, so.
Yeah. So, just PDF fillable card, you have something really long.
Yeah.
I did put a projected schedule on there for you guys to take a peek at.
Is the outreach/promotion, it's not on the agenda, but.
Well, I think we need to come back to George because his
Yep.
time is valuable
Yep.
to us.
Yep. Sorry, George.
No problem.
Can we do that and then release George to go out into the
At
world?
least the homes.
George, tell us what was decided.
The meeting ends, the work begins.
The white smoke came up.
Yeah, I'm adopting most of the wording changes, even though I believe they're completely stylistic, but I have no problem with that.
Welcome to Cushman and Shapiro land.
Southeastern Connecticut.
Yeah, I'm from Eastern Connecticut too, so I can live with it. I'm going to put some clarification in the scope of the agreement that under the best of my ability, I will give you the information you need to make the proper decision in exchange to eliminate the indemnification paragraph at the end of the contract.
Right.
And then there's a couple other very small clarification things.
There's an insurance clarification.
Business days as opposed to 30 days. And then I submitted already to you the insurance information for the motor vehicle coverage and consumer, what was the other one? The workers' comp coverage. Somehow the motor vehicle coverage got dropped out of the contract that I submitted, but I always intended it to be there as I have already submitted the document, so.
And then the other piece was, we were gonna hash that out today, the schedule of deliverables.
Right,
But we were gonna attach that, make sure that there was some movement. If, if we hold him up and so on and so forth, but we want to see a schedule attached to it so that at least we have a milestone.
Okay, and you have it.
Well, I have a proposed very ambitious schedule because that's what I left here thinking the committee wanted, but these numbers can change, or things can change
At any time.
Sure. She'll distribute the papers.
I will.
So, but before we get to that, I'd like to get back to the actual application. So, I took what was submitted to me from committee members. I made sure that it was either already in the application, or if it wasn't, I placed it in the application. A few instances, now I understand some of the things that were in there were really meant for that application, not for this application. So I eliminated that. And I then took my experience with what's happening now in the Summers case, where I thought I had made myself extremely clear. When I got back answers that didn't pertain to anything I asked, I then went back in this and underscored a number of things, tried to make sure I say it till I'm sick of hearing it, after 3/3/21, because nobody ever seems to get that.
Right. Yeah.
Because why would they? The pandemic didn't start on 3/3/21.
However, a lot of funds went out the door for PPP in 2020 that isn't reflected in any of this. So there were people who got hurt in that time frame, but there were already remedies available to them. They may not have availed themselves of it.
Treasury decided on the 3/3/21 date.
So now that brings us back to this application. Other than it being placed on the town's website, that requires somebody in IT to put the town seal on it, to then load this up on there, to make it interactive, to test it, to make sure it works. All those things that are out of my purview or control.
I can take care of that.
So if we go to the target, so if there are any other changes, yes?
Okay, one thing, I don't know if this trickled down to you, but I had a comment where rather than your personal email address, we could perhaps create a Gmail account for you. Does that sound familiar?
Or a Accountable Lime account?
Okay, I would just, because of the way I work when I do things for other organizations, I think there should be an email address that at least one person on the committee also knows the password to, so that if you are taken away by Martians, we can...
So my purpose for that was just so I could interact back and forth with an individual. When they had a question about the application, I could assist them with filling it out. I was going to say the application itself needs to flow to the town.
Okay.
And then needs to be deflected to me in some manner. But the application comes to the first selectman's office. I don't know how it gets logged in to your system, but the way it works in my two previous contracts, there was a designated person when they came in every day, then emailed them to me. So the absolute first application always is in possession of the town. I start to look at it. I develop.
Right, I know all that.
You need to follow the way it all flows. So then I work out a tally sheet and a write-up, which I then send back to the town, so the town always has a duplicate record of anything that I've completed in case Martians grab me. Then it's always up to date weekly. If I were to vaporize, the town would know exactly where it stood and have all the material in its possession to go forward. So that personal address is only for someone to ask me a question, not to send everything to me and not to the town.
Okay, I just saw it on the application itself. So.
I'd have to look and see where you're...
It is on the last page of the application.
We need to have on there how it's submitted. Well, I guess that all has to be sorted out.
Right, that's part of that's part of our
Point person.
I can be the point person in the town hall because I work for the town, right? Only Phil and Dave and I are employees. I mean, I guess technically Martha is too, but not day to day.
I feel like I am.
And Nicole.
Some days.
Okay.
She's right.
Nicole isn't busy. She does not want the application.
No, Nicole doesn't, but Nicole, I can do it outside the scope of my other job.
Okay, I have one
And she
other
will get
question.
paid for this function.
So see where it says email me with any questions, not
Submission.
submission. That needs to be figured out in the application when it comes into the town, who they submit it to.
My opinion, we have so many hurdles to get through.
Yeah.
I don't want to, I think we should leave it as is.
Yeah, okay.
All right, so
One other
basically, we want to say on his application, though, submit to,
Accountable, alignment, whatever the website is.
And they can do it in person, they can fill out the form.
Whatever we put on.
They can scan it and attach it to an email, whatever they want to do.
okay.
But it needs to be into the town by, and I left those dates
Received
open.
by.
We need to
I
put
said
those,
either postmarked or date stamped to make it.
Received by.
Received by.
Received by.
Because we can't count on the post office.
No, received by.
It could take 3 weeks to get here.
We've got 60 days.
Yep, received by
no later
They're
than
online people, they can
4:30
walk over
PM on
Right there by
whatever
town.
day.
whatever day,
You
we
decide.
close earlier than 4:30.
Okay.
Right,
4 p.m.
4 p.m. So 4 p.m. on whatever day is the last business day of April.
And yes, if it's under the door when you come in on Monday, that's,
No way to
But you
No way.
filled out online.
but.
Not.
We have a Dropbox also here that goes to a locked box in the front door.
I think
so
that
people can
if we
email.
can engage that, and I put it in the press release or
I thought
somewhere,
that was good, yeah.
that we want to
Okay.
let people know there's a secure way of submitting it.
All right, so then, following that timeline, then May 1st through May 15th is internal review. May 16th to May 31st, George is going to start making recommendations to us. Yes?
So I am going to try to stay as current as I can be with applications. The way they've worked twice now is a big pile comes in the beginning, there's a little bit of a lull, and then a big pile at the end. I should have applications ready to submit to you folks for approval before the deadline even ends. So we can, again, you want to move quickly, and by the way, I'm proposing all this quick. If at any time you want to slow down, we slow down.
No, we get it.
But you know, this is the plan, so that I am already, you folks are already making decisions before the last application has even been turned in.
Right.
Then you come up with whatever your final number is, compare it to what your original number is, which is not yet determined, and then I would recommend reducing each grant proportionally to fit it into the amount that you are thinking of. So I don't know, you said the number came out 300,000, 500, whatever that number is, that's all you're ever going to spend on this program. And the applicants, if there are more applications than you would have anticipated,
Everyone's reduced.
it reduces proportionally across the scale.
6% reduction.
I would also recommend that rather than raising the amount people are eligible for, you lower the amount that they're eligible for. That way you'll get the widest group of people. And should you have money left over, you could either repurpose that,
Yes.
or you could then say, well, let's look at, so if you had $7,000 in damages and you only were eligible for 5 and you got $3,400, but now there's money left over, maybe a review of all of that a second time will bump up everybody's check by a little bit.
Well,
So that's how, but that's at the end when you're already looking at numbers and you have facts in front of you.
but also what we saw in the Day article about Stonington is that they reserved the right to have a second application.
Yep.
I saw that. Because they didn't go through all the money. I actually had one other thing on the application before we went on to the timeline, and that was should we consider, for economic recovery, should we consider an end date? So start date is March 3rd, 2021. Should we consider an end date of April 1, 2022 to this?
Why wouldn't we?
Of course we are.
Have to adapt
People
to that.
can start going out shopping.
That is the date of the application. April
April
1,
1?
2022.
April 1.
Okay,
That's
so the
next
date,
week.
okay, so the date of the
That's what we're talking
application.
about.
But basically, Mary Jo, what we're saying is, if, let's say they start to fill out the application on April 6th,
Yeah.
in those 5 days, did they have some type of economic loss?
They shouldn't be running out buying.
No, I don't think so.
So that's why we're just saying that it's an 11-month span. In these 11 months, what happened? If you want to use April 3rd, it'll give it exactly 11 months.
That's the same endpoint for everybody because that's when the application process.
I don't have any problem with that. I just thought April 1st is next week and we're not ready to go live.
No,
When I
but
saw that, I was
that's
like,
for their
Well, whatever
Economic recovery.
for
whatever
economic
the-
recovery, it'd be nice to have a defined window.
And
I
it's
don't
boxed.
disagree.
Yeah.
I don't
Launch of
disagree.
application.
But I think they both should be the same. I mean, I really.
Oh, yeah.
All our numbers.
So you're
That's
saying
when
just
applications
bookend
go out.
the March 3 with an end date?
End date being whenever the launch of the application
I
is.
think we're trying to
Vicky,
get
so
from
you
getting this
follow
out
that,
with that
George?
longer.
I'm not sure on what the end date is. So you're saying the application period would be from 3, not the application, the eligible period?
Economic loss between March 3rd, 2021 and April 1st, 2022.
Like, that's,
Because if it's past that, it's moot because we're already.
no, April 30th would be the last day that they would be eligible. So you're talking about 1 month's worth of expenditures, perhaps.
We make it the last.
No, I don't know what that means.
So April 1st is the first day you can apply.
I'm not talking about
April,
applicant.
well, but it relates to it. April 30th is the last day you can apply.
Okay.
By saying April 1st is the end date, you only had an additional 30 days to eligibility anyway. So I don't think that really materially affects anyone's application to any significant degree.
That's where I was at. I was like,
Yeah.
well, why would we take them for
And
all
it
of
prevents
April?
people from going out and
Shopping.
shopping.
We're saying,
So-
leave it at April 30th.
No.
No, I'm saying that you could have it April 1st, and it wouldn't make really much difference. I have seen no evidence of that happening in the previous 2 towns,
but
but
don't
it certainly could happen again. So I don't think there's any harm at all putting the end date, saying that in all my questions, did you expend money from this period till April 1st, 2022? That's your applicable window of loss. I don't have a problem with it.
I hadn't thought of it until I saw Stonington's this morning.
Okay. Are we capping at 10? Is that what we're doing? Are we capping at 5? Are we saying no more than, I mean, what are
Up
we
to
doing?
10.
I know
Up
we're
to
all
10?
tired. I know this meeting has gone on longer than they're supposed to. This is an important topic. So, thank you, Jen, for forwarding the demographics and the output of the East Line, because I was really shocked by the low number of business applications East Line had. Really shocked. Now, we're already dealing on a compressed timeline. So, it's going to be tough for us to get the word out as it is. And it would be nice if we had, East Line is what, about double our size?
Yeah, it's similar, 17, 18,000.
So if they had 30, I mean,
That was nonprofit and business.
if we had 15, it would be nice that we made a meaningful impact to those 15 that did in fact apply under the business laws.
I just think though, we have a list of 450 businesses. We know how many businesses got the PPP loan. If you're, be careful what you wish for. You know, some of those businesses, if you looked at them, I've never heard of them.
Yeah, but the PPP was first. It met a different, distinct
It's
time
totally
period.
different. It is.
So, I don't know, if our goal is, and maybe it's not, if our goal is to really help those businesses, which was a big part of the survey, came back, businesses and nonprofits, help them, big part of our survey.
So you're saying go less because you think we're going to
No,
more
I'm
people?
thinking a discussion could be, had to go 25. I know George has a different feeling, but I mean, whatever that number is, maybe 10 is not enough. If we do nothing, we leave it at 10,000 and we only get $100,000 of business request and nonprofit requests, perhaps the committee's fine. Great, we have more money that we can apply, to other aspects. Okay.
$10,000 somewhere.
No, per application, not our total number that we're going to give out.
You asked what the total loss is, and you
I think,
adjust.
I personally think that 10,000 is a strong cap. I think that we're trying to reach as many people as possible. 25,000 I think is too much. I don't think we can support that going forward. If we got 25 applications, that's
And by the way,
a lot of money that
I pointed out in that email, they did not cap an old Lyme at East Lyme at 10,000.
I know.
And so some people got 2,000 and some people got 30,000.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Why are we putting the cap in?
Because we want to manage expectations, I believe.
I think you can say gifts will be under 10,000.
Yeah.
Up to
10.
Up to
10.
I like
I'm
the,
very cool with that.
I like the idea, I like the idea of a hard stop based upon something George said the first time he was here, which was, when you decide how much of this is going to go into that pot, at $25,000 a whack, it goes pretty quick.
Right.
And you also don't, if you have a hard stop at $10,000, then at least you can spread that money over a larger field. You know,
If you get the applicant.
right, I was going to say, that's applicant dependent.
I feel like
Based on what Mary sent to us, we got a lot of applicants for PPP. I think we're going to get the applicants.
Good, I hope you're right.
Well,
I
the
think
survey
we
would
will.
indicate strongly that there's an interest.
Yeah.
Do you know what East Lyme did for their
yes, they
outreach?
put it on cable. They put it on their cable channel. I'm sure about 5 people saw that. They put it on there. They have an electronic sign that puts about 20 characters at a time in front of their town hall. And they did go to Niantic Main Street, which is like their business association, and did an email blast.
And they did emails and press release and stuff.
Yeah, but as I don't think they did much with the nonprofits. Maybe they did more with the businesses.
Okay, so, and one other point of discussion, are we asking, I know George had indicated before that he talked to applicants to try to get them to 10,000, or are we asking George to just let them apply and determine? Because there was some discussion about that at a previous meeting as well.
I recommend they apply and George determines
To get them up?
what they apply for.
Yeah, I agree.
What happens when you see someone clearly doesn't understand the question and
But that
answered
gets
it?
back to maybe you're out of the room.
I will.
How accessible are we going to be to folks that may be challenged by this?
That's why I think you're hiring me.
Right.
To make sure that gets done. To make sure that-
It's a different application.
So when I get,
But I will say this, George talked about, and correct me if I'm wrong, the last time you were here, how you went out and discussed and brought their loss up to meet that bump stop at 10 grand. I think if somebody applies for $8,500, let's say, and meets the criteria and knows that's a loss that they can substantiate and they give it to you, you give them $8,500. If somebody gets stuck, calls you and you say, well, if you didn't have water and sewer, did you really not have your restaurant open? You know? So you lost that revenue. Oh, I didn't know I could include that revenue. And that brings them up to $10,000. I think that's your bailiwick to say to them, you know what, you should incorporate that in that loss. What I'm also saying is, if that is in fact a loss short of $10,000, I don't think it's your obligation to talk them up.
Don't go digging.
No.
Don't go digging.
But see, there's a fine line here. There's looking at one person didn't understand the question, and they've got 85.
Right.
But everything else shows me that number should be bigger on this line. The other person answered the question correctly, so now they're getting 10.
Right.
Well, do you want to penalize the fellow?
Not at all. I want you to talk.
Work that out. Right. So anytime I do that, I am not trying to find expenses for people.
Okay.
I'm trying to treat
That clarifies
fairly.
I think we defer to his discretion.
And that's to make sure.
That clarifies the discussion.
But let me bring up another important point here, folks, about the money. you haven't decided how much you're going to spend on this yet.
No, we haven't.
So it's kind of premature to determine what the grant total should be until you know how much you're going to spend and whether it could stretch out or whether the number should be smaller. You want more people, you want a large group of people to get some relief.
Correct.
That's the idea.
So I thought the committee had decided we were going to let the applications dictate what we were going to, how we were going to finalize the buckets. And then when we go to the Board of Selectmen, we were going to say, here is the community, here's what the community has spoken, here's what they've asked for, here's what we recommend.
Weighted by the survey. Yep.
Weighted by the survey,
Yep.
exactly.
Right.
I'm more than happy to try it any way the town wants to do it. But my judgment is less money, more people are happy. Fewer people, they get...
Additional argument for the 10,000 cap, additional argument.
Yep.
Well, my argument is for less.
I know that.
But I'm good with whatever you decide, but
Let me ask you a question.
Yes.
So a nonprofit applies. Can different departments of a nonprofit apply for the Art Academy, for
Those are
example?
different projects.
That's what I'm asking about.
That's
The
the
one-
No, that's the community initiative.
That's different.
It's a one legal entity.
One legal entity.
All right, so, okay, all right, so the motion on the table is to consider, discussion on the table is, do we go 5? I don't think we want anything like a 5 or 8, I think we want like a 5 or a 10.
7,500.
I like that.
Well, I have one other question for George.
Okay,
Are
I do
you
too.
finding in Summers, now that final rule has you putting in May 3rd, 2022, or 2021, because I didn't see that on the East Windsor one, are you finding people are having a harder time getting to 10,000 because they're not including 2020?
Yes.
Okay.
What is the typical number you're seeing them get up to? Or what would
Well-
be relevant here?
So Somers has made things a little bit more complicated because they have not decided whether they're going to give the grant the way I recommend or whether they hired a consultant to do it the way that they want to do it, which is a sliding scale depending on your loss. So they're thinking that the larger your loss, the more you should get, the smaller your loss, the less you should get. I'm trying to convince them that the spirit of the document is that the smallest people get relief first, that it's meant to reach out to the people that got hurt the most, the smallest, the most vulnerable.
Didn't have the reserves.
Those are the people that you need to take care of, not the bigger company, the bigger small company that lost $180,000, but they're still open and operating, they're still moving. The guy who was cutting the lawns now has a push mower because he can't, that's the difference. So they're looking at it that way. That required me to write all my documents in a way that at the end I could just put final touches instead of major rewrites. So in answering your question, a lot of people have been confused and submitted numbers to me that covered a closure period that was not applicable.
Yeah.
That required me to search through the rest of the document to try to get to that 10,000 number without having to contact them and search and do all that. So my MO is to try to get people to a number with as little
Back and forth
as possible. Some people, they answered every question wrong. Or they told me itemized how much they lost, but in the final number that I'm asking them to tell me what they claim the number is, they say no loss. Well, that's clearly not correct because of what you also put on the form. So now I have to go back and get them to do it. Some people are smarter and do it right off the bat. Some people, I've literally had to fill the numbers in for them, talking to them, pulling it out of them, because they don't get the way it's organized. So anyway.
So if we said up to 10, that would still allow someone that only had 5 to apply
Only
for
get
5. You wouldn't have to do this back and forth. If
No.
you got 5,
Nope.
it's done, stamped.
Right. Everything, they filled out the form correctly, and that's all they claimed it was. And then I would say, okay, that's it. That's all you lost, 5,000. So, and there are, of the 50 or so, well, I have 60 72 applications right now with 10 days left to go in Somers. And so that's going to get over 100, I believe. And I would say 80% of them hit the 10,000 mark.
Just gonna say.
Some of them
Right, I lost-
are way over than that. Some are like 6,800, 7,200. A hairdresser asked for 2,300, and I know she's got more expenses than that. I know she had to replace equipment because it wore out early because of the hazardous chemicals they were using to clean them. And so I'm going to ask her some questions about those things, and that's going to trigger in her mind, oh yes, that's right, I did that.
Valuable resource.
So that's what I try to do, and I try to do it as fairly as I can, give everyone the same attention. I will say, if there's someone that isn't answering me or responding to me, I call them, I write them, I knock on their door. I will have, my goal is to have every single application resolved with nothing hanging, under budget, and ahead of schedule. That is what my goal is. And I don't know what's coming my way, but I admire what you folks are doing and how important it is to the community, and I want to be part of it. And I'm willing to roll with it to make it work,
George, I had one other question. This is when you and Phil were out of the room. We were talking about nonprofits putting in for economic recovery, so your application. And let's say they didn't have a particular fundraiser in 2021 because of the pandemic.
Absolutely.
But their annual fund did really well because people were sending in checks. So they didn't necessarily have a net loss, but they had lost opportunity in their fundraiser. How do we approach that?
So that gets into more of the forensics that you're trying to avoid. So you're asking them to state in several places where they had losses. If they were able to recover somewhere else, I don't know how I can root that out of them.
Well, so Nicole said it's in the 990, correct? The fundraising. But philosophically, are we looking at a net loss or?
A nonprofit, I would not look at a net loss. I would look at what they could document as losses, and if they picked something up on the other side, it's a nonprofit giving back to the community. So I don't think utilizing does.
Yeah, why beat them up?
Because that was a question that was raised yesterday.
Okay, so can we get back to George and ourselves? Are we at up to 10? Is that what
I'm going to make
a consensus?
I'm going to make a motion that the economic recovery grant be capped at $10,000.
Second.
We already have that approved. That's already.
I know, but I think it had to be restated. I felt like it.
Clarification.
Review small grant limit.
Well, I think George even had.
I second that motion.
All in
Bill
favor?
already did. Is there any further discussion?
Just to bring me up to speed on this, you're gonna cap it at 10,
Yes.
to 10,000 or?
To 10,000.
We don't have a total number of how much, we're not gonna say 500,000, up to
Yeah.
10,000 per, just up to 10,000.
Okay.
The economic loss.
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay.
May I ask another question? How much
Well, we have to
went
vote.
to legislate?
We have to vote.
Oh, I'm sorry. I thought you did.
Any other discussion on that?
1% of
I'm sorry, but I have to leave here at 2 o'clock. I have to go upstairs and do some work for
So it was
Commissioners.
$21,620.
Okay.
Any vote? Can we vote on this?
Aye.
Aye.
Um,
Any nays? Any abstentions? Okay, good.
George, on your June 1st target date to release checks,
Yep.
I don't think that's accurate because the Board of Selectmen still have to commiserate in June. So,
That's,
just for your,
okay, I put a 2-week period for May 16th through May 31st for that stuff to be happening. You don't think that's,
Our Board of Selectmen meeting is the first Monday of every month, so we wouldn't meet till that first
so
Monday of June.
First Monday?
So
Then we should check with Nicole, what's the
Yeah,
realistic?
I would say that checks would be out by the end of June, because we could always have a special meeting if we had to, if we needed to continue discussion.
Okay, so what you really have is a date to approve requests, and then a date for them to meet, and then a date.
It's just a target, so
Yeah.
what would you say, by
I'd say July,
15?
I would say July 1.
Yeah.
July 1?
1 July. If the other date.
Okay with that? No?
All right, that was just me pushing things.
But people are going to want to know when they're getting paid.
Because
That's
she
my
still
only
has
point.
to, does
What's
her
the-
contract or agreement or attestation, that has to follow.
Well, that's done.
I'm just talking
That's
about,
done by the time it goes through the board of selectmen.
what is George telling
Aren't we
people
all,
what he's on?
we want everything to be ready to go at once. We can't have two target dates.
No,
So-
I know that.
Okay,
I'm
so
just saying that,
she still has to this. I think putting July 1st gives her a little wiggle room.
right, and that's what I said, but for the awarded checks, 1 July.
Right.
But I think too that George doesn't have to meet that target date. It doesn't really have to be on you for target date. It's
No,
not,
but you'll be asked perhaps by people.
Right, and then this now will attach to the contract that I'm going to rework as target dates, loose
Right,
target dates.
Yep.
right.
Just a clarification on that agenda item. I had included that because in the circulation of the comments on a couple of the documents, there were a couple of comments on whether the 10 was too low or should we have any. It was just to address that on the agenda, and
We did.
thank you.
We did, and we revoted, and it's passed.
So moving on, is there anything about the town meeting?
You did a wonderful job.
Wonderful job. Congrats.
May I just?
Oh, yes,
just
you had a
make-
question on the website.
well, no, I already got that. I just want to make sure everybody, I'm in sync with what everybody is assigning me to do here right now. So I'm going to rework the contract to incorporate what we agreed with. I'm going to change the target dates, but just the July 1st date, June 1st to July 1st. The other ones are just going to still hang out there, and we're going to try to achieve those. And then I'm going to rework the application to make sure it's clear everywhere that the end date of funding eligibility will be April 1st, 2022. And that's my role tonight. I'll get this to you as quickly as I can, because I don't know how long.
And I will continue to be your contact person
Until you pass me
I
on.
pass off.
Right. Okay. So,
Don't do that.
pass off. Don't do that. Pass off. Yeah.
All right.
Martha, do you need this
Jill
meeting
LaMarche.
to give you a motion to support the changes you've made on the contract?
No, I don't.
Well, we haven't seen it.
Gotta see it.
I know, we haven't,
All right, so,
saw the draft.
yes,
Make a motion that the ARPA committee support the draft changes in the agreement with George Krebda as agreed to with the attorney and George today.
Second.
I was a party to that. Yeah, I'll second that motion.
okay.
okay. Any discussion on that? No. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed?
And if you get me the contract, I will send it out to all of you so you see it, but then I'm taking it right to Tim so he can sign it and we can,
And then we can get the application.
get it. Okay.
George, I like the wording on this. Can I keep this?
Yes.
My copy?
So that was an example of outreach. What they did was print those up, and they literally went around town with thumbtacks and put them up at every store, every place, the post office. They mailed them out to all the businesses in the town, and then they followed that up with, I guess the town has a Facebook page, and they put it on the Facebook page, and they blasted that out weekly. And now for the last 3 days, it's going to be a blast every single day to that list to try to really push the last minute. That is to do two things: to make sure that the town got adequate notice, but also for the town leaders to be able to explain later on everything that was done that they ignored and didn't file the application, and now it's unfair. So when you demonstrate the 22 things the town did do, it kind of quiets that complaining. So anyway,
And it's something to think about when we do our outreach too. If a little's good, then a lot's real good.
Yeah.
You know?
Absolutely. Including at some point, a walk along Main Street with maybe the members of the committee or the first selectman or whomever to just make sure the business community and nonprofit community understands that the town has their backs and that it's a business-friendly town.
So do you recommend mailing to every single residence and business?
Every business. I wouldn't send it to every resident.
Every business.
You just generate.
It's cheaper to send it to everyone in the zip code.
Wow.
I think. Yeah. And then you bring this into your church and say, hey, did you know about this? So,
Absolutely.
yeah.
Yep, that's,
Yeah.
the printing cost is not large it's the postage, so. But the more publicity, the better for the townspeople.
Okay. Thank you, Beth.
Anything else for me? Because I have to leave.
Any
Thank
other
you.
things at the town meeting, Martha, for those of us who didn't go?
Except my son, who of course has a degree now in management, tells me that my PowerPoint did not have right-sized font, didn't have color font.
I told you that, Martha.
And the next time we have a
I know.
PowerPoint, please let me know, Mom, and I will make sure that it's all those points.
I think you did a
Then
great
let you
job.
know about the blue on blue.
Thank you,
I
Martha.
told you, no blue on blue, Martha.
Yes, you did. I was there.
Martha, that's the perfect ending. Someone else will do it next time.
Well, if you know so much.
Okay, so let's just have our to-do items. I'm going to update this, send this to Martha for Attorney Carey, so that saves you one step, Martha, if that's okay.
Thank you.
As well as the committee. That's what I'm supposed to do. Anybody else do any other things?
Well, do we think we're going to make this June 1st launch day?
April 1st.
April 1st launch
I think
day.
it's going to get hung up on the attorney review.
Yeah.
No,
Okay, here's my question.
Here, Joe, put it in the thing that
We cannot go back and forth to the town anymore to get approval for anything there. I don't believe there's any prohibition that an individual can donate a banner to, right? A banner.
To put across the Falls Road.
No, we talked about that, sure.
No, that's okay.
Oh, okay.
What?
You think it's somewhere else?
Town hall.
We're a historic district, we have to get approval for something.
But remember when they did the graduates?
Yes, that's true, we did the
There
graduate.
is some precedence for allowing that thing that rolled down the top of town hall for
For
graduates.
$185, I can personally donate a banner that looks like this.
10,000, 10K.
Or whatever we want it to say. We can't go back and forth to town. We don't have time. And I don't think there's any ethical
we're
issue
in the
with the
historic
donation.
district.
To get the word out when this
I
comes
know,
up.
but before you do, you need to check with Michelle or whoever about whether a historic district is going to have an issue with that, if they did last time. We're going to be fine without a banner. I mean, if you want to have a banner, it's a great addition, but we did fine with the survey without a banner.
All right.
I'm not.
My concern is getting it up on the website and having it operate and work by that date. Everything else that's on that to-do list can bounce off of that. That is what I see as the single biggest obstacle right now for this occurring. Everything else can be fixed. So that's the only question I have about whether we can meet that date. Everything else can be met, I think.
The Board of Selectmen meeting is the first Monday of June.
Yes.
So that's June 6th.
Yeah.
April.
Yeah, special meeting.
Also, don't forget there's 2 holidays.
Oh, you mean after the
Friday is a holiday and Memorial Day is a holiday.
But a banner, if it does get volunteers
We're
or
not going
whatever.
to do the banner yet.
It doesn't have to be on April 1st, but
It's appreciated, but I don't want it to be.
Jen, just because you're the one who just said it, you believe, you know that we have to have this sent to the attorney, the application?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yes, that's why he was here today. That's why he already got a copy.
He hadn't read it yet.
No, but he will be reading it.
No, how?
That
I think he got
that
that.
doesn't
I
mean
think
we're
he got
gonna get
that from us
feedback,
going
but
over the agreement.
but there, I don't think there's that much that he'll object.
I guess I just don't want we don't want that hung up with the attorney. Right?
Fair, yeah, we'll have to work this, hopefully.
Okay. I could understand I understand the contract, but okay.
We're going to continue to work by email on the press release?
Yes.
And do we have to approve next time spending on a postcard?
No, we have $1,500 earmarked for postcard. We won't be, right?
I can find somewhere to put postage.
Okay,
Thank you.
okay, thank you.
I think we need a special meeting to get the postage approved.
Correct.
A town meeting.
Town meeting, yeah.
But I should tell him.
I can work it on my computer, I'll be in the.
Well, I knew you were.
And same
So
with George,
if
I'll
an
be
email
in-
goes out,
I'll be in test.
please include a deadline for comments to be responded back, and otherwise, everybody's got to move forward.
Moving.
Yeah, we have to keep this parade
And,
marching forward.
okay.
The convoy stops for no one.
As a former New Yorker, I found your town meeting very quaint.
I hope so, we've been doing it for 300
I know. We're on 1814.
Hear ye, hear ye.
And you did not hear one day in that whole night. Just
We
so
have
you
had
know.
town meetings where swears and things have
Oh,
happened
yeah.
as well.
Yeah, we've had some non-point ones, for sure.
Okay.
We've had them.
But that was a
Make a
good one
motion
for
to
your
adjourn?
first one.
Yes.
We
Is that
done?
second?
We done?
Motion?
Motion, I just made a motion to adjourn.
Oh, I'll second that.
All in favor, hearing no discussion?
Aye.
Thank you all.
Hear no.
See you, bye.
Thank you. It's a pleasure working with you.
Thank you, George. Thank you for your time.
I think you sent me those.
Chris,
I may.
I'm so tired.
Good day.
You should be happy when you.
Yeah, I was, actually,
but she left already. She's booked out.
Because I kinda-
No, it's not something.
you're all insane.
Okay, 'cause yeah, 'cause I sat down here and wrote it out, so that it said.
Oh, good.
3 days from now, I'll look at it, and it'll all be Chinese.
Right, so, well, I know, so I'm gonna.
All right, oh my God.
Chris emailed me back because the numbers,
Turn it
the
around
corrected
quickly.
numbers are lower.
Did someone take my phone?
I'm sorry, I lost
Fix it? 'Cause I was trying to,
We're in agreement, he has to do a little legal that.
Yeah.
I wanna
Call it a purge. I think
I
I
felt,
said
and
it's a purge.
I felt pretty soundly
Yeah, that's fine.
And that
before
we're mandated.
I said the first thing that you were.
At least one
Because
year,
of
right? Yeah.
So that's the funniest thing.
So you,
You're coming to our meeting on Wednesday. Coming.
Next Wednesday?
No, tonight.
She's not back
Tonight.
two other guys who are just as capable. I don't know where they got it from. I don't know, where did you get it from?
Partners were okay, more agreements ago.
You know what I mean? So it's like, okay, I'll change it.
Town meeting, and she goes, that's Kathy, I'm not gonna be there, but she didn't say she was on vacation, I just thought she made a choice not to come. Okay, so I said, so I'm assuming then she's gonna be on Zoom to explain this. I don't know.
Thanks, George.
Probably not.
Yes, ma'am.
She hasn't come to us.
Or to see you again soon.
Damn right it is.
On what?
You need an extension cord, so I bought one, but I want to.
And if you want more details,
That is
for you.
I think we need that.
You
That
can use this,
was eye-opening
but you
discussion
can't
with
plug
her.
another
She talked to you, and then she
multiple
called me back.
outlet.
I said, oh, I know, email from Christine, who was like,
you can
yeah,
plug,
but
you can use this.
there's a big change from last month.
Question from YouTube.
It has to be plugged in directly
Now, was
to
the
the
final
and unplug it when you're done.
Okay.
of all
Oh, and
that
unplug it when you're
discussion,
done.
Yeah.
that
All
we
right?
are not
But you
accepting
can't plug this in here.
individuals and households.
No, we would want the TV.
Because I already
Yeah.
told about
Yeah, you can have
But you
finance
want it
that-
unplugged every time.
Why, you wanna leave this on, is that what you're saying?
that
I wanna-
we had decided,
Like
push
if
it to the
you're
social
looking at your
Yes.
PC,
That's, we're going back to
it
that.
resets
Okay.
or something.
And then
I had trouble with
contract.
Yeah,
Saturday
it still
morning.
has to find, all it has to do is find it.
Okay,
Still.
all right.
Yeah, I don't have a
And then I
problem
do
using
think,
it.
I like.
But the problem is they will come in here, somebody plugs another
Make
multiple
an
outlet,
application
when they come
for
in,
just that.
that's, fire.
Or the committee
Right,
can
no
make it
problem. Thank
say,
you,
we want
by
to
the
put
way.
100,000, whatever.
I'm solving my own
For
problem.
assistance to families.
You'll
So
find
it kinda gets
that,
us
well, you
out
know.
A little bit. So I think we're okay, we're going back to kind of where we were.
It's been fun?
See you, Bill.
We're getting
Stay in
there,
trouble.
we're getting there, we're
A
getting,
little bit.
we're getting there.
I saw the beat it move forward.
You know what? If we had started in March when this act passed, we would be gone, we'd be done by now, but I'm just complaining.
Started on October 6th.
Yeah, but we got nothing in March or April, or May, or June.
Across the whole